So, yes, the long-awaited CLICO report was laid in Parliament on Friday, so making public findings more than a decade in the making. And these are some of the stories that we do have in the newspaper this morning. CLICO back in court today, and King's Counsel wants justice for policy holders. Well, we do have a gentleman in studio this morning. He has been very, very vocal over the years concerning what has transpired with CLICO. He is the head of the CLICO Policyholders Group, Mr. Peter Permel. Mr. Permel, thank you very much for coming this morning. We do appreciate it.
You're most welcome, Marlon. And let me say, because I think it's the first time I'm appearing on your show for the new year, let me just wish you and the management and staff of TV6 and by extension your parent company, OCM, a bright and hopefully prosperous 2026.
We hope so too.
Yes.
Mr. Permel, let's get right into this, because I suspect that this is a major development that would have occurred on Friday. Of course, there has been so much toing and froing over the years, and of course there was this commission of inquiry. Then after the commission of inquiry, as is the case with other inquiries, people are very concerned as to what the findings are in the inquiry, and then there is always talk about legal action and this matter being fought in the courts and so on. What's your perspective this morning? It has been a long fight, and it would seem that the fight is continuing.
Sure. Before I directly answer your question, Marlon, let me first say I'm particularly buoyed and heartened by the headline you just read there, the King's Counsel, who wants justice for policyholders. Because these are really the victims. The policyholders are the victims in this, what I call this train wreck. Because at the end of the day, the whole purpose of the Commission of Inquiry was to determine what caused the problem in the first place and look at solutions and how some sort of restitution can be had for the policyholders. Because these are the victims. These are people who lost millions of dollars. So the thing about it is, when I heard the news that the current administration was going to lay the Commission of Inquiry, the Coleman report, in the Parliament, I was immediately alerted, and I said, wow, that after all these years, because remember, you recall that the Commission started in 2011, and it concluded its work with respect to CLICO CL Financial and that group in 2016. I think the Prime Minister, how they call him, the former, he got the report sometime, I think in July of 2016, and he came to the public and he said that he was asked by the DPP not to disclose the contents of the report. In fact, the comment, and it stayed with me for all these years, he said that there were adverse findings of multiple criminal misconduct of a kleptocratic nature. I think that was the quote he gave. And that told me that things were very, very wrong with what transpired at CLICO. Now, you would recall that during that whole Commission of Inquiry, before it was concluded, there was a narrative that somehow these policyholders were being victimized again because they were being told that they took a risk, they should have known better, and all that sort of nonsense. What we do know as a result of the Commission of Inquiry is that there was fraud, massive fraud, and larceny, and these are the terminologies that are being used by Sir Anthony Coleman in the report. In fact, if you would permit me, Marlon, I would just like to read a particular section of the report, very, very brief, where it says, and I want to quote. Now, this refers, and I'm not going to call any other names except this particular name because he's now deceased, so I can call his name. But I will let the process unfold, in terms of people can go and read the report on their own. So it says it is referring to Mr. Lawrence Dupree, who, as you know, was the chairman of both CL Financial, which is the parent company, and CLICO, the subsidiary which we have an interest in. And it says here, Coleman saying, his conduct was such that the Director of Public Prosecutions should take immediate steps to test the sustainability of criminal proceedings against him. The following aspects of his conduct could be found upon further investigation to give rise to evidence of criminal liability in respect of the following criminal offenses, and then it goes on to list these offenses. Now, what we are talking about here, this is not the perfect storm, as I think he had alluded to when the whole issue of the collapse of CLICO came out. He said no, it's a perfect storm. It had to do with the financial meltdown that took place in 2009. Anthony Coleman and the Commission has debunked that. They said that had very little to do with the collapse of CLICO. It had to do with structural issues. It had to do with the criminal conduct by the principal officers and members of the board of directors and so on. So the point is that the policyholders did what they were supposed to do. This was an institution that was registered under the FIA, the Financial Institutions Act. It was also under the Insurance Act. It was regulated by the central bank. So no one knew or could have known that there would have been problems down the road or what was going on at CLICO. And this apparently has been going on since 2002, if you read the report. There's conduct that goes back as far as 2002. And I remember that phrase, I think that Ramesh Lawrence Parat, Senior Counsel, he had coined, I do pray. You remember that?
Yep.
So he had signaled from then that there were issues with CLICO. But it seems as though nobody paid attention to it, or the people who were in authority who should have been paying attention, it did not.
Two things. Yeah. One, when it comes to the state of affairs of the policy holders, what has happened? Have they been paid off? Are they still waiting for those funds? And two, are you disappointed that so many years later that what we call justice has not been, or it has escaped us in this matter?
Absolutely. There has been a travesty of justice as far as I'm concerned, because as you would realize, and just before I get into that, let me just mention that I want to commend the Honorable Prime Minister and the Attorney General for having the courage of their conviction to lay the report in Parliament, because this now puts us into a whole new era now in terms of how we move forward with it. But what is important to note is that not only are we disappointed that no action really, because nobody has been charged, as you know, Marlon, nobody has been charged in this matter. And after millions of dollars have been spent on this commission of inquiry, I think the Attorney General made reference to Deloitte, but they were recent in this whole fiasco. Before them was a fellow called Bob Lindquist and his team.
Yes.
They had spent about $100 million on that particular forensic investigation. And one would have thought that that would have been sufficient to lay charges against people. Because, I mean, if you go into Massey and you pick up a chocolate and you walk out, you could get 6 months in jail. You know, man, it doesn't take all these years, because we're talking about, what, at least a decade after the report was passed on to the then President Carmona, and then he passed it on to the then Prime Minister, who then withheld it because of the Director of Public Prosecutions. And I think, based on your editorial of Saturday, I want to agree with you all. The scandal that this whole CLICO CL financial issue is sort of overshadowed by the fact that why is it that nothing has transpired since more than a decade? And it's even more than a decade because, as I said, Bob Lindquist was there before Sir Anthony Coleman. So I think the DPP has some explaining to do to the public. I mean, he's a public servant. He's being paid by the public. The policyholders want to know what is going on here. Why has no action been taken against anybody, not even a charge? I think I saw you all have sent him an email or something asking for a comment or so, and I haven't seen any comment yet. So I'm waiting with bated breath to hear what the Director of Public Prosecutions has to say with respect to all this money that has been spent on this Commission of Inquiry, Deloitte, Bob Lindquist, and absolutely no charges have been laid against anybody.
The policyholders are still waiting on their monies?
Absolutely. And in fact, the policyholders have gotten paid a partial payment, let's call it that.
Okay.
And this dates back to 2012. And I want to, again, it's because of the then Honorable Prime Minister, and who is still Prime Minister, who is Prime Minister now, Kamala Prasad-Bisesta. She is the one who came up with this idea to have a settlement for policyholders. And it had to do with bonds, as you recall,
yes.
zero coupon bonds. And then you had a small cash payment of about $75,000 for those who had policies of more than $75,000, and the ones who had less than $75,000, they got paid all their money. This is the principal sum of what their policy was. So that since then to now, people have not gotten all their money. They have gotten partial payment. And where we are now is that CLICO is now in the black. CLICO is a very profitable company, as you would see from the newspaper reports and their financial statements. They're extremely profitable. There's a board in place headed by Ms. Jennifer Fredericks, and I'll speak about that in a little while. What is required now, Marlon, for those policyholders to be made whole, let's use that term, made whole, meaning they get the residual balance that is owed to them, is that the government, in the first instance, has to declare that they no longer have an interest in those policies, because those policies were assigned to the government in return for the government injecting money into CLICO to pay those policyholders a portion of what is owed to them. What has happened over the years, assets have been sold, assets have been transferred to the government in lieu of cash in order to settle that debt. That debt has been comprehensively and convincingly settled as far as the records show. And therefore, there is no longer any need for those policies to be assigned to the government. What the government has to do is to release those policies back to the policyholders. And therefore, once that is done, then the liability is with CLICO, because CLICO is the trustee. And therefore, we don't want any money from the government, you know. The government doesn't owe the policyholders anything at this point in time. Who owes us money is the trustee, CLICO. And that CLICO is being headed by a lady called Jennifer Fredericks. And I cannot for the life of me understand why this lady has not instructed the management to ensure that these policyholders get paid the residual balances that are owed to them. It makes no sense. You follow me? Because this money that we are talking about is in CLICO. These were assets that CLICO had. As you will recall, there was a MHIL, which was the Methanol Holdings International Limited, that was sold maybe a year or two ago under the then PNM administration by Minister of Finance, Coleman. And that asset, when that was sold, that is really what concluded the entire thing in terms of how much money was still owed by CLICO to the government. Yeah. What happened is that they paid themselves a dividend of, I think it was $1 billion. So what happened is the shareholders who own CLICO, which would be the CL Financial in liquidation, and the government, who owns 49%, CL Financial in liquidation owns 51%. They shared up that $1 billion, and the government got their 49% of it, and the CL Financial got the 51%. And I'm saying, what, the policyholders have not been paid any money?
How many policyholders do you estimate are still waiting on their funds?
We're talking about over 15,000 policyholders. Those were the policyholders who accepted the government's offer in good faith in order for the whole situation to be ameliorated, if you want to use that word. And therefore, they have been waiting, very patiently. They have cooperated with the government, both administrations, the then People's Partnership, then the PNM administration, and now we have the UNC in office. And I do recall, because I think it's on Hansard, that the Honorable Prime Minister, Mrs. Kamala Prasad, said that she could not, because her intention was really to settle everybody. If she could have done that at the time, she said she would have. But the finances were not there. CLICO was in the red. And I think my recollection is from Hansard is that she said once the situation improves, she will do the necessary in order to make people whole again. And it is just obvious. It just makes sense. These are the people who built CLICO. These are the people who invested their hard-earned money, these young professionals, business people, you name it. And now the CLICO is in the black. Now CLICO is making billions of dollars. You're telling them that they cannot get their money, and all this money being spent on a commission of inquiry, on a forensic audit, and zero, absolutely nothing has been done. Marlon, this is a scandal.
Yeah, well, the Attorney General said on Friday that the state had spent an estimated $28 billion rescuing CL Financial and its subsidiaries. I see where the central bank is also speaking about the report, describing the document as voluminous. The bank said it spans 676 pages and demands careful and independent consideration. While acknowledging concern about the prolonged nature of the litigation, the bank said it was examining the broader implications of the report or the implications the report might have for its claims against former CL Financial officers. It added that further updates would be given when appropriate. You have any position at all as to what we're seeing here concerning the central bank and the matter returning to court today?
Well, as I said, our focus really is trying to ensure that the policyholders get what is contractually due to them.
Yes.
And these are some, what I would consider maybe sideshows, if you want to call it that.
Okay.
You know what I mean? What we are concerned about, as I said, and you read it this morning at the top of the show, that King's Counsel,
yes.
Peter Carter, my namesake,
yes.
he who was counsel to the commission, lead counsel, he is saying that the policyholders should get their money. So here you have somebody thousands of miles across the Atlantic is concerned about policyholders, and you have people right here who are trying to deliberately obstruct policyholders from getting money. And here I refer to people in the former administration. I wouldn't call any names on your program, Marlon, but they know who they are. They know who they are.
Yeah. So, as I said at the beginning, I suspect that this is far from over.
Absolutely. We are relentless. We are not giving up on this matter because it is right that these policyholders be paid what they are contractually due. There should be no good reason why in 2026 policyholders haven't gotten the balance, the residual balance of what is owed to them. And all this money is being spent left, right, and center, and nothing is coming out of it. The people who are getting rich off of this are the attorneys, the accountants, the forensic accountants, everybody else, except the victims. The victims in this matter are not getting what is due to them. I hope, I'm going to make an appeal on your program this morning, and I hope the Honorable Prime Minister is listening to me. And as I said, we don't want any money from the government. We don't want any money from the Treasury. What we want is for the Prime Minister to declare that they no longer have an interest in these policies, and therefore call to assist us by calling on Jennifer Frederick and her board to do the right thing and pay these policyholders the residual balance that is owed to them.
Yeah, Peter Permel, it's always good to see and speak with you. Thank you for taking the time this morning, this Monday morning, to come out.
It's always a pleasure to be here with you, Marlon.
We do appreciate it.